Good evening, my friends, and welcome to the next episode of URU Complete Chronicles. Last time out, we were making our way clockwise around the room, listening to the entire history of the Kings of Dene. Now, when I came to do the edit, I suddenly thought to myself, hang on, wait, did we miss a book? Did we miss a book? But then I went and had a little look. So, here's the thing. The first three Kings of Dene, their books are missing, right? And we didn't miss a book. There is just a missing book. So we've got to bear that in mind. There are gaps in this chronology. We have Zephyronicus in the chat. Good morning to you. Hope you're having a great week. With that, let's make a start with King Kedri. Kedri took the throne in 3654 at the age of 80. Kedri himself was seen by many as a testament to the type of woman his mother had been. Right, okay, I had to do a double take on that one, right? As the type of woman his mother had been. Right. Let's start that again. Kedri took the throne in 3654 at the age of 80. Kedri himself was seen by many as a testament to the type of woman his mother had been. The day of Kedri's coronation was the proudest moment in Sharma's life, she often said, up until the day she passed away in 3689. Whether or not they agreed with Kedri's decisions, it seems most did, there was seemingly hardly a single Dene who did not greatly respect and care for Kedri. He was a king for the people, and most historians agree was the most popular king of Dene history, besides the Great King. Sponsim has subscribed. Thank you very much. You are on a 7-month streak. Thank you very much for that subscription, and good morning to you. Kedri led a number of small proposals that often benefited the lower classes. At the same time, it seems, he assured the higher classes that the proposals were the right thing to do. Up to that point, the entire island had basically been set aside for the elite. It was Kedri who established the district of Shamathen, later changed to Kerethen, as a more affordable residential district. Kedri also donated his own Age of the Kings, written during the reign of his grandfather, to the Common Library. He directed money to massive renovation projects throughout Dene, including further additions to the Great Temple, the Opera House, and further renovations to Bellary, the deteriorating district that Rakari had started years earlier. In the numerous books and journals written about Kedri, it is said that he often walked the streets of Dene and attended events with the rest of his people as though he were one of them. He was married in 3686 at a public ceremony that was open to all who wished to attend. As one writer said of the event, if you did not want to be there, you did not want to be Dene. Kedri eventually passed away in 3903 at the age of 329, leaving the throne to his firstborn son. Seems like a great guy. Good morning, Shroomfi. Hope you're having a great week. King Lemashal took the throne in 3903 at the age of 100. Lemashal had been fairly involved in the minor guild of actors, although it was said that what especially interested Lemashal was illusion. Up to that point there had been a few different magic clubs, although nothing official. We also have Darkflow in the chat, finally could sub. Good morning. 12 months! Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. 12 months of subscriptions. It's much appreciated. So, in 3961, Lemashal, with quite a bit of trouble, forced the establishment of the Minor Guild of Illusionists. It was not a guild that most found necessary, but Lemashal argued that neither was the guild of actors, painters, or musicians. It was entertainment, of which illusion was a valid form. Ironically, it was later discovered that the establishment of the guild was an illusion in itself. Technically, it's been 2 years since you started watching streams. Has it really been 2 years since we did Taiji? Has it? Close to that. It has been close to that, hasn't it? Yeah. Has it really been more than 2 years? Maybe. Ooh. Oh dear. I tell you what. 2 years. I'm not... That's a long time. That's a long time to have been doing this, actually. I haven't really been keeping tabs on... how long I've been doing this for, in honesty. Like, my YouTube channel says that I have something like 800 videos or something on it. So I'm going to need to, like, go back and... We're going to need to check what the 1000th video is going to be. We should probably do something special for video number 1000. That's got to be coming up fairly soon. While the guild was debated, Lemmershall established an undercover intelligence force to keep track on the more dangerous factions and subgroups of Dene. They were a highly secretive group of which the public had little or no knowledge until years later, and so, with the confirmation of the Guild of Illusions, the Relimar, literally translation the unseen, were also established. He's making spies. Though the previous few kings had been fairly focused on Dene and expanding their own culture and territory, Lemmershall again looked forward toward the outside cultures in a manner that had not been seen since Hinash. In 3975 he remarried as his first wife had passed away at a young age to an outsider. Unlike Hinash, who had also married an outsider, Lemmershall and his new wife bore a son, his first, 20 years later in 3995, and another son in 4014. For the first time, the Dene were truly confronted with their views on outside cultures, and arguments were said to have started as soon as Lemmershall's son was born as to whether or not he would be allowed to someday rule as king. Unfortunately, though Lemmershall led quite a few efforts to supply better lives for other cultures, along with freer trade and sharing of resources with other ages, the remaining years of his reign were dominated by whether or not his son would be allowed to reign. To Lemmershall's credit, though he could have forced his will concerning his son upon his people, he never did. If his son were to eventually reign, he said, it will only be over people who want him to. In 4030, the council decided that a king had to be of pure Dene blood. Lemmershall signed the decision into law the following year. When he died in 4083, he left the throne to the youngest child of his cousin, whose mother had been the younger sister of his father, Kedri. Now the footnotes here, taken from a speech of the council arguing the establishment of the guild. Lemmershall did not need council approval to establish the guild, though many kings preferred council approval. It was said later that Lemmershall purposefully wanted the debates to take place as a distraction. Not quite. Taiji was April 2023, so 1 year, 7 months. Oh, it's getting close though. Getting close. Yeah, thank you very much for dropping by, Dark Flow. I will see you soon. Have a great day at work. We have Zork Player 1 in the chat. Hi, hello to you. Hope you're having a great start to your week, Zork Player 1. Up next, we've got Ishek. King Ishek took the throne in 4083 at the age of 85. His grandmother had been Sharma, and of Ishek it was often said that he ran his throne almost exactly as his uncle Kedri had. He was another of the people's kings, and refused to separate himself from his people or view himself at a higher level than those he served. It seems a king with such an attitude was hard to not like, and his popularity was close to that of Kedri's. Yes, we are in the city. We're in the big library room with all of the books. Like Lemachal, he focused on the involvement of non-Dene and their importance to the Dene culture and expansion. His powerful words of equality between the Dene and non-Dene were truly put to the test in 4103. Ishek and his wife had been touring a food facility run by natives on the age of Yemas. As it turns out, the party was ambushed and Ishek's wife was taken by a group of natives who managed, using Dene linking books, to easily escape before Ishek or his guards could react. As word leaked out of the event, the words animals, uncivilized and primitive were used to describe those of the other worlds in a way that had not been used since the Pento War. Ishek fought the people's new perception and argued that not all outside cultures should be judged on a few radicals. His words, however, were seen as empty by much of the public as he waited for word on his wife. Word finally came. The Yemas wanted their own worlds to rule as they felt the Dene ruled them. They had specific demands for the kind of worlds, many of which were impossible as they had no concept of the art of writing. Unless they were given the 3 worlds they demanded, Ishek's wife was to be executed. Many viewed Ishek as a faithful study of history and in particular the Pento War. Because of his knowledge of history and his belief in the integrity of the Yemas, he was fairly convinced it was not the Yemas who wanted the books but some small faction of Dene who was directing them. Rumours say that he was even fairly convinced of the particular faction that was doing it. As was the case with the Pento War, it had not been the Pento who were to blame, but the judges who had wrongly sought power. Given Ishek's apparent distrust of some within his own people more than those were not Dene, he had been a strong supporter of the Raelima. As it turned out, it was their information that saved him. There were a number of groups who felt though Dene should be completely sealed from other cultures. One in particular had been especially vocal in their opinions. Especially while Ishek's wife had been held captive, using the tragedy to further their own cause. It was to this group Ishek apparently directed the Raelima, ordering them to uncover any information they could. 3 days later, Ishek sent out word that he had no intention of giving the Yemas the worlds they had asked for. Hours later, Raelima informants followed 2 members of the faction Ishek had suspected to an illegal age where his wife was imprisoned. Once the public received word that it had once again been their own people directing the operation, records indicate that they were greatly dismayed. Plans were uncovered that indicated the faction was to kill his wife no matter whether the ages were given or not, to only prove further that outsiders could not be trusted. In fact, it seems as though the public was quickly learning that it was their own blood who could not be trusted. As Rinaref and the Great King had often said, it was a great power they had been entrusted with, and it is in our own hearts that must be watched, a temptation too great to be resisted without strict rules or willing hearts. As a result, there was a great push for more strict guidelines for interaction with other ages, as well as rules for the ages themselves. They sought the rules not because the other cultures were savages, but because their own culture could not be trusted to deal with them honourably. Ishek passed away in 4291 at the age of 293, leaving the debates to his firstborn son. Here are some footnotes. Depending on sources, 2 different groups are credited with the kidnapping, although Raelima records indicate that it was a group known as the Blood of Yarvo. Other records indicate it was a small group known as the Light of Dene. Here we go. So we've got 1-2 gap, 1-2 gap. Ooh, we're missing like every 3rd one from now on, but we've only got 8 more books to read in this room. And then we have a bit more exploring to do. Oh man, King Lo Shamanish. Lo Shamanish. We'll go with that. King Lo Shamanish took the throne in 4291 at the age of 123. Though Lo Shamanish's reign was relatively short, it was believed he made the most of the years he was given. Lo Shamanish had seen firsthand the effects of too much interaction with other cultures, and because of that held firmly to his views, disagreeing with what was becoming the majority view in Denis. He often pointed out, as his father also said, that before the Pento War, strict regulations had existed on interaction with other cultures, and it did nothing to stop the judges from their writings. Lo Shamanish himself stated, "Those who wish to take advantage of outside ages and peoples cannot be stopped, must first be listened to within Denis, not forced to take such extreme measures. When extreme measures are taken, the consequences must be increased." In 4305, law was passed stating that the creation or trading of illicit ages was punishable by permanent imprisonment on solitary prison ages, a fate that some had said was worse than death. In 4307, Lo Shamanish passed, barely, another law stating that any Denis who coerced an outsider to commit a crime, no matter what the crime, was also punishable by permanent imprisonment. While the laws were passed, Lo Shamanish encouraged further interaction with the other cultures, while continuing to argue interaction itself was not the problem. However, it seems as though many failed to see his stance and still pushed for stricter measures on the Guild of Writers and a complete sealing off of any interaction with outsiders. In 4334, the Age of Tracis, a major mining age, was halfway destroyed because of the mistake of a native running Denis machines that had been established there. Families were forced to evacuate and, in one particularly odd case, supposedly a child was born while the mother had been linking from Tracis back to Denis. Regardless, the destruction of the age was another cause of argument for those who wished to seal themselves off, and a case that Lo Shamanish argued could have happened regardless who was running the machine. Sadly, in 4438, Lo Shamanish was assassinated by the same faction who had kidnapped his mother years earlier, making his life an example of which he had often preached. It was the Denis who had to change. If they did not, he had argued, problems would always exist, whether or not outsiders were involved. He left the throne to the firstborn son of his younger brother, as he had no children of his own. Okay. Well, I mean, if Lo Shamanish just got assassinated, King G is going to have a hard time, probably. I'm going, what's the word? Corporate chic again today with a Sports Direct mug. But sometimes you just want 20 ounces of tea, to be honest. King G took the throne in 4438 at the very young age of 36. The combination of an apparently immature and weak king, along with the tension that was growing within Denis over the outsiders and religious principles, went down in history as a bad one. At the start of his reign, government records say G was overtaken with his new palace life and the luxuries it afforded him. He seemed much more concerned with what kind of food would be served for breakfast and whether or not Denis should pull back all of its people who were living in outside ages, as some were suggesting, wrote one anonymous author. Because of his apparent lack of concern over the real issues, it was the Grand Masters who quickly became the most frustrated with G. It was said by a few Grand Masters in private journals that G would wholeheartedly agree with them while they presented their strategies and plans, and then agree with their challenges an hour later. The indecision by G made for little evidence of progress and complete frustration for most of Denis. For the first time in many years, the signs of division began to appear as they had during the 2500s. The once unified religious beliefs showed signs of splitting. The once unified classes began to separate into rich and poor, and the once confident rulers of the worlds began to wonder whether they could rule even themselves. Adding to the confusion were the words of the Watcher. The Watcher, as he had come to be called, was the child who had been born between ages and now, rumours said, had the ability to see beyond time, past, present and future. In 4500 he wrote Words, a 625-line volume describing his visions of Danae. Much of the book dealt with a great destruction of Danae that would one day occur, and the signs that would come with that destruction. Many claimed that the book was seizing upon the chaos of the day and dismissed it as rubbish, while others seemed to be rather intrigued. Also in 4500, Guildmaster Kinef of the Guild of Legislators brought forth a proposal that would allow the use of private education separate from the guilds. Although many seemed frightened of the idea, as education and the guilds had always been thought of as inseparable, the proposal eventually passed by a slim margin. G seemingly had little to say on the proposal, one way or the other. G was married in 4502 to Mylane, a woman who had been married 3 previous times. It was G's first, and the prophetesses advising him had strongly spoken against it. The marriage lasted 25 years before ending, and marked the first time any king had divorced one of his wives. G remarried in 4565 to a woman 100 years younger, something culturally expected. It was the rumours that she was the daughter of the Watcher that created problems. She denied the claim, but did show quite a bit of interest in his writings and convinced G to do the same. The marriage lasted until 4645, when G's wife vanished. Some said outsiders had taken her, since nothing had been resolved concerning them. Others said G had murdered her, and others said she had returned to her father, the Watcher, even though the Watcher had died in 4606. G's final wife was one of his own prophetesses. He had sought for advice, marking another first for a king. The two were married until G's death in 4692. He left the throne to the third son of a close friend. He was 290 years old. To sum up G's reign, one author wrote, "There was a collective sigh of relief throughout the cavern on the day he finally left us." I do like that. G's final wife was one of the prophetesses. He had sought for advice, marking another first for a king. Oh, he had sorry. G's final wife was one of his own prophetesses. He had sought for advice, marking another first for a king. Right. So it's the fact that he married the prophetess was the first, not it wasn't the first time a king had ever sought advice from a prophetess. Okay. Totally misinterpreted the meaning of that line. So we've got some footnotes here. It seems private education never really received near the admiration and respect from the public, and thus never truly succeeded. Common amongst those still wanting more strict guidelines pertaining to outside involvement, one of G's gardeners claimed he witnessed the murder with his own eyes. Though the Watcher was believed to have died in 4606, there were numerous rumours of people claiming to have seen him and talked to him. So it's a real preacher of the desert, Paul Atreides kind of situation. Okay, now we've got a skip. So, one book missing there. King Yabelshan took the throne in 4843 at the age of 109. Though most commentaries say he had held to the same beliefs as his father, It seems he was not nearly as strong and thus did not carry the level of respect his father had, a character trait that some of the more violent factions preyed upon. Demarth had managed to refocus the Denis to a large part. However, the few factions who still desired to make their case were able to make Yabelshan's reign an unpleasant one. In 4865, the Blood of Yarvo kidnapped Yabelshan's first son from the Guild of Chemists. In a letter to the faction, stated they would kill the king's son if one of their own leaders was not released. Yabelshan ordered the Raylimar to find his son, but they were apparently unable to do so. Later it was discovered that a key member of the Raylimar had joined the Blood of Yarvo and was aiding them. Feeling forced, Yabelshan gave in to the demands and released the prisoner they had asked for. The body of his son appeared on the steps of the palace a few days later. The death of Yabelshan's son, along with newfound evidences of a mole within the Raylimar, further separated Denis into two sides. Those who wished to end outside intervention were becoming stronger, publicly raising their course almost daily. Those who followed the majority were growing angrier and less tolerable of those who did not. As a result, there is little doubt that there were very few Denis left who fell into the middle ground. There were even less, including Yabelshan, who could bridge the two sides. Yabelshan, in an apparent attempt to divert his people's attention from the brewing wars, decided in 4889 to announce remodels for all of the 18 major guilds. It was the first of its kind since the Denis had been founded and warmly embraced by the guilds. Under the announcement, Yabelshan changed some of the original restrictions of Renaref, offering the guilds more liberty in the structures they could build. In 4901, Yabelshan stated his plans for a new common library located directly within the Varman district of Denis, a middle-class district. In 4910, he announced plans for a new park to be built on Neref Island. In 4914, 3 new recreation ages were placed within the parks as gifts from the Guild of Writers in order to celebrate the completion of their new guild. The diversions seemed to do their job until 4954, when an explosion occurred on the age of Minas, killing 400 outsiders, 78 Denis. It was apparently the result of a bad combination of gases, one the Denis had brought with them and the other already in existence on Minas. Another push was begun to seal themselves from outside influence. The Raylimar, who were usually counted on in these situations, apparently had no information as to the facts of the explosion. They were still apparently in the midst of their own chaos trying to discover the mole. There were some who thought the explosion had been a setup, but it could not be proven. In 5043, Yabelshan placed a man by the name of Faresh in charge of the Guild of Illusionists. His first mission, as ordered by Yabelshan himself, was to find whoever was destroying the Raylimar's ability to gain knowledge. Though most believed that Faresh had been more interested in actual illusions than the unseen, he was also known as an extremely intelligent man and immediately put into action a plan to clean up the Raylimar. He also began construction of a house on one of the private islands of the cavern that blatantly demonstrated his love for illusions. Yabelshan died in 5081 at the age of 347. He never had any other children after his son was killed, and left the throne to his youngest brother-in-law, his younger sister's husband. Okay, quick tea break. We're very close to having, so we'll definitely finish this episode, for sure. I've heard these missing books are elsewhere. Maybe at the top of this tower. Someone in one of the YouTube comment sections was talking about more books being at the top of the tower, but we're going to have an explore after we finish this room. On episodes where there's so much reading to do, you definitely have to keep hydrated for sure. It definitely leads to a lot more talking than usual. Okay, we're going to go with Eamon or Emmon. Let's go with Eamon. King Eamon took the throne in 5081 at the age of 150. 2 years after his coronation, 2 members of the Rayleigh mysteriously disappeared and were never seen of again. Faresh became a silent hero in the key members of the government, and the factions were again quieted, knowing they were being watched. Key members of the government were often seen at parties taking place in Faresh's mansion, and rumours of puzzle rooms and secret halls grew throughout the city. The house itself, located on Cather Island, was becoming one of the more talked about buildings in the entire cavern. Sounds great, let's go. In 5093, 2 members of a cult known as One Denis were proven guilty for the explosion that had occurred years earlier on Minas. Both were permanently imprisoned. At the same time, Eamon, along with the Guild of Caterers, announced the completion of 2 new food ages, one of which was run solely by outsiders and produced new food sources that had never been tasted before on Denis. Dodo Sevenger in the chat, just dropping by to say hi, enjoy the lore. Thank you for dropping by. Good to see you. Hope you're having a great week. I think I fluffed that last line, so I'll just read it again, sorry. Announced the completion of 2 new food ages, one of which was run solely by outsiders and produced new food sources that had never been tasted in Denis before. I think the meaning's the same, I just got the words the wrong way around. The popularity of Faresh's mansion caused others, mainly elite, to request permission to build on the many islands that surrounded the city proper. In 5095, Eamon decided to sell many of the islands that up to that point had been government property. Records indicate the sale of over 23 of the islands in 1 year to private citizens who could afford their heavy price tag. In 5102, disaster hit the family of Faresh in the mysterious death of his daughter. Official city guard records say she awoke in the middle of the night claiming to see spirits and jumped from her bedroom window to her death. Rumours abounded as to the true cause. Some thought the house was haunted, while others, mainly government, thought she might have been the target of factions. You're having a lot of fun playing too much Supervive. That is not one that I'm familiar with. I will have to check that out. Perhaps the most damaging rumours dealt with the Watcher. In words, he had described similar events taking place, and such a public event caused many to begin to study his words again. It was the beginning of philosophical chaos yet again. Faresh left the house a year after the death of his daughter, claiming to be unable to live with the memories of his daughter. The house was given completely, although no one knew it at the time, to the Rayleigh. Rumours of dark shadows in windows and boats silently rowing towards the island fueled the idea the house was haunted. It appears that after the Rayleigh controlled the house, Eamon himself often made visits recommending a number of renovations, tunnels, etc., that he thought would aid them in their cause. In 5202, a public ferry system was approved by Eamon, offering much more frequent access between the island, the city proper, and the surrounding smaller islands. One of those islands Eamon gave to the minor guild of artists, musicians, and actors who turned it into a cultural centre. In later years, the centre often hosted outside concerts, plays, etc. on the water. Pause for a moment to appreciate that. So these are 23 private islands that have been bought by incredibly rich people, right? And it's like, oh, I want an island, I want to build on an island. And the king has just approved a public ferry system so that you can get between all of these various islands. Good. just making sure we're all on the same page on that one. Yes, misappropriation of public finances. So interesting. So Supervive is a PvP game mixed between a MOBA and Battle Royale. Do you know what? Somehow, even as I am approaching like 40, I have never played a MOBA. Like, literally, just as a genre, I have never played one. Like, the closest thing I've ever played to a MOBA is... So I've played hero shooters before, which I guess are kind of like MOBAs. So things like Paladins, where it's like, character shooters. So not like CSGO, although I've played plenty of CSGO, but like, ones where you have like different people with different abilities and stuff. I really enjoyed Paladins, although I sucked at it. I really enjoyed Counter-Strike, although I sucked at that, to be fair, and still do. So there we go. So yeah, if anyone needs like a wood ranked, AWPer on their team, just let me know. Yeah, no, I never played League. I never played Dota. So yeah, so hero shooters, or I played a little bit of RTS, but RTS games stress me out. They stress me out so much. We have a first-time chatter, Dark Wait 3R. Good morning to you. I hope you're having a great start to your week. We're reading Lore. We are doing audiobook adventures. We're most of the way round this room. And we're largely reading the entire history of the Kings of Denis today. Dodo is 44 and way too old for this stuff. But if I ever want to try, just ping you on Discord. Alrighty. Four years before Eamon's death, the Guild of Stonemasons announced Derethany. Okay, we'll go with Derethany. 4 years before Eamon's death, the Guild of Stonemasons announced Derethany. The substance had been produced in a laboratory for the first time and was the start of much improved construction techniques. Eamon died in 5240 at the age of 309, leaving the throne to his firstborn son. And then we've got some footnotes at the bottom of this one. So this was not public information in around 6000. However, the discovery of the moles was well known in the higher circles of government. Shemas and Herius became known for a large variety of fruits and vegetables that naturally grew on each. Words has numerous references to dreams and mourning in the streets, which may be interpreted to describe the death of Farish's daughter. Interesting. And Derethany was a lightweight stone which proved to be extremely strong. Yarvo. Found your videos on YouTube, which I enjoy very much. Thought I'd stop by once I catch you live on Twitch. Thank you very much for stopping by. It's great to have you here. So, we're skipping a king next. We're skipping a king. King Adesh. King Adesh took the throne in 5549 at the age of 49. Though Adesh was young, it was also said he was mature for his age and took quite a bit of advice from his prophetess Trisari, who had also served his uncle. Adesh was apparently a religious man, but not an especially accepting man. The prophet Gish arrived on the scene in 5574 and began preaching, similar to what Tevar had done years earlier. Unlike Tevar, Gish praised the words of Yarvo, but nothing else. The great king, he said, was a farce. He was Tevar. He announced his people... Sorry, I'm fluffing this paragraph so bad. The problem is it's got so many names back to back in it. Tevar, Gish, Yarvo, Tagarn. Right. We're going to try it again. Oh dear, Nightbot is just having a big... It's because we've hit the top of the hour. Nightbot has decided that it's going to spam the chat with all of the pre-recorded messages at the same time. The prophet Gish arrived on the scene in 5574 and began preaching, similar to what Tevar had done years earlier. Unlike Tevar, Gish praised the words of Yarvo, but nothing else. The great king, he said, was a farce, as was Tevar. He denounced his people for claiming that Tagarn was more important than following Yarvo's commands. He declared that Tevar and the great king had used Tagarn as an excuse to do what they wanted, and it was time to focus on Yarvo's commands again. One of these, he added, was no interaction with the outsiders. Though Gish was not the first to say such things, for some reason the public came in droves to listen to him, making him an extremely popular figure. Adesh denounced Gish's words at every level and arrested him numerous times, and by such actions only encouraged Gish, arguably making his impact upon the society even larger than what it otherwise would have been. Do we have a lot of fans here? I don't know. I always keep my view count hidden whilst I'm playing. Looks like we've got like 7 people in the stream at the moment, which is great. Gish continued his preaching until, in an apparent fit of rage, Adesh ordered the Raelima to kill him. It was said later the decision was most likely the worst of his reign. The Raelima succeeded in their mission in 5675. There was extreme outrage at the king as well as the official church. Exactly as Gish had taught, Adesh had justified killing a man strictly against the laws of Yarvo because he felt there was something more important than was justified because of Tagarn. Gish became a martyr, and those who followed him increased. Adesh made attempt to draw his people back, but it was too late. There were apparently very few people, even ardent followers of the great king, who could agree with his decision. In fact, it was rumoured that it was one of Adesh's close advisors who killed him in 5701 at the young age of 201. The throne was left to his firstborn son, Lanaren. So we've got some footnotes here. So the word literally means to love with the mind, implying having a close personal knowledge of the other person, or in certain case, Yarvo. It had been taught that in order to gain access to the perfect age, Yarvo only required such a relationship and nothing else. Many think it was in fact Trisari who convinced Adesh to make the order. Is anyone else in the chat chatting? Yeah, there are some people in the chat chatting. Here, if I @ Uzork player, hopefully you could see that in the chat. You should be able to see that in the chat. If you can't see the chat... Oh, okay, great. We have Spyper has joined us in the chat. Finally made it. Warm greetings, everyone. Greetings to you, Spyper. We've got 3 more books in this room. Wait, King Lanaren? Wasn't that the one we just did? No, we did Adesh. Hang on, haven't we already had a King Lanaren? Maybe not. Interesting. Okay. Who is my favourite king? Oh, blimey. Who's our favourite king? I mean, the Great King seemed pretty great. Like, oh, I'm not sure. I reckon it's going to be one of the one. I'm going to go with Rinaref, right? I think we've not read Rinaref's book yet, but he was probably pretty good. Congratulations on becoming a twofold father. Thank you very much, Spiper. Yes. Littlest child is getting bigger by the week. So, yeah, certainly keeping me busy. King Lanaran took the throne in 5701 at the age of 98. Lanaran had not been close to his father, and as a result was not much like him. It was rumoured that it was because of Lanaran that Adish's own advisor had killed Adish. He knew Lanaran would give the people what they wanted. Lanaran immediately denounced the actions of his father in killing Gish, and informed the public of the existence of the Raylimar, their involvement in the death of Gish, and promised to rid them from all government activities. The announcement was a shock to the public, and a huge blow to those who had served the Raylimar. Most ended up living in hidden private ages, while a few were murdered after the years of service to the government. The loss of the Raylimar again gave the factions hope that they would be able to carry out their demonstrations again. However, Lanaran also promised to rid outsider involvement, meaning the factions had no need for such acts. It's believed that the promise was not one that Lanaran necessarily meant to keep, but instead one he intended to pretend he was trying to meet to keep the factions happy. He also believed wholeheartedly in the plan to build a tunnel to the island and was unable to push it through in 5714. I'll read that one again. He also believed wholeheartedly in the plan to build a tunnel to the island and was able to push it through in 5714, as Meeman had not been able to. While Stonetooth was busy digging, Lanaran promised that its next task would be to continue expansion by the Ashemen district, with eventual plans to create a new residential and cultural districts. Few things to unpack in that paragraph. So the island, right, is in capitals here. This will be, from context, I would assume this is the Raylimar Island, the one that was given to Farish. Now, when we were talking about the Great Zero runs from... Now, there were sort of disagreement about the Great Zero as to whether the Prime Meridian should run northward from the Great Zero, or whether it should run from the Great Zero to another monument. That could be something on the island. It's the only kind of geographical thing that has been given sort of this much prominence in the text. Stonetooth is, we've not come across that yet. Lanaran also ordered the major guilds to begin work on replacing all ages that required outsider involvement. He demanded ages that would carry out the same tasks but without outsider involvement. Most guildmasters knew the plan would take years and years, and though they did not agree with it, agreed to attempt it. In 5721, new techniques were developed to incorporate structural reinforcement in extrusion-based construction, some that would aid construction of the districts Lanaran had promised. In 5734, the tunnel connecting the island with the city proper was cancelled. Stonetooth had been working on it for over 20 years, but the guildmasters, who were already required by Lanaran to replace a huge number of ages, were not about to connect their homes on the island with the city proper. Lanaran agreed, as there were further concerns that such construction would affect the lake level or even the algae within the lake. Instead, Stonehtooth was ordered to begin clearing out more space next to Ashermen district. In 58-56, construction was begun on the new Lanaran district. Stonehtooth was ordered to begin further exploration of the cavern by way of new tunnels. In 5902, the guilds announced 4 new ages to replace some of those being used by outsiders. The announcement meant little except to have the factions believe that eventually outside involvement would be finished. 5903 marked the first inhabitants of the Lanaran district, mostly manual labourers, who worked in the adjoining Ashermen. The Raelima were officially finished with their work in 5986. The announcement was fairly quiet as most of their work had ceased long before that. In 5999, Lanaran passed away at very old age of 396. He left the throne to his 5th and youngest son. The environmental damage claimed by Lanaran and Dene environmentalists was never proven. Most agree it was an easy way out for Lanaran, who then did not have to admit he was bullied by the Grand Masters who lived on the island. 3 of the ages were food ages, while the 4th was meant to replace one of the major manufacturing ages. In reality, none of them were ever used to the extent the ages they were replacing had been used. Did we get to Kirath yet? Sounds familiar. I have a feeling Kirath is somewhere over here. Nope, that was Hinash. That's Hamelin. No, that's the Great King. No. Maybe we don't have Kirath yet. We should all meet at Story Night sometime. Oh, would that be like on Mula, I guess? More light in the cavern, please. Can we make more light in here? Possibly. There are some bowls which need doing. The monument that was mentioned with the Great Zero has a lot to do with how the Dene viewed prophecies, very important to them. Okay. So apparently there's a light switch somewhere? Oh, maybe? No. We are able to make more light in Mula. Oh, okay. I mean, I don't see anything obvious on the walls as to how I would do that. Okay, we've got another skip, right? We've got another leader skip, and then we have the last 2 for this room. King Jaron. King Jaron took the throne in 6284 at the age of 83. He was apparently much like his father, more interested in keeping everyone happy than declaring one side of the debates concerning philosophy, advancement, or outside involvement right or wrong. As a result, though the people were satisfied, there was further division among them. The elite and poor became more divided, and though there was quite a bit of new construction and renovation in both the elite and poor districts, there was nothing done to join the two. For some reason, Jaron was obsessed with expansion and exploration of the cavern. There were rumours his obsession stemmed from Watcher prophecies. One in particular stated, "Because of tunnels, Dene has changed forever." Jaron never said what drove him, but throughout his reign he pushed the Guild of Miners, Mechanists, Engineers and Surveyors to work together to create new drills and machinery. He had great plans to widen the Rudenna Passage, which when opened would allow for further expansion. In 6430 the announcement came. Rockbiter and the Burrower were both christened in a great ceremony, then immediately put to work. Stoletooth and Stone-Eater were used for further city expansion. The once violent factions that had existed were, for the most part, dissolving. Many of their members were seemingly beginning to call themselves followers of Yarvo, as Gish had been, and though they did not support outside involvement, they believed it was best to obey Yarvo and hope for a peaceful solution. Though Jaron carried out a few meetings with the factions, the dissolution of the factions had little to do with his policies or leadership. Regardless, he was able to focus on mining efforts without consequences. It was a luxury the previous kings had not been afforded, and the main reason some of the greatest expansion in Dene history began under Jaron. Jaron himself died in 6498 at the age of 297. Though he did see the completion of the expansion of the Rudena Passage, he never saw the new areas to which the passage led. He left the throne to his third son. One of the URU fan projects is more light in Mula. You're trying not to spoil the favourite quests of everyone. Okay, fair enough. You heard R2-D2 is coming back. That is a reference that I do not understand. King Rikuth. King Rikuth took the throne in 6498 at the age of 56. Though young, he had 2 older brothers and a sister, with whom it was said he often consulted. They each understood the logic of giving the throne to the youngest son. It guaranteed more time in the throne for the individual, and worked well with their younger brother as no family had done previously. Rikuth's first major decision came in 6510, when a new cavern was found by expeditions led by Rockbiter and the Burrower. There were calls to expand the city, but Rikuth was apparently unconvinced it was a smart plan. His older brother, who happened to be Guild Master of the Guild of Surveyors, agreed to study the cavern extensively, and Rikuth promised to make a decision upon reading the results of the study. In the meantime, Rikuth married in 6556 to a woman named Yeesha. Her father was Grand Master of the Guild of Chemists and a strong believer in Gish and the fallacy of the Great King. Though Yeesha had some influence on Rikuth, he continued in the tradition of his father's never publicly stating his views on philosophy. However, she had much more influence on the 3 sons that they would eventually have together, including the youngest, Kirith. It was her influence that would change Dene forever. So yes, we've not reached Kirith yet. You call it R2-D2 because it reminds you of the robot. It's just the air pump for the dividers in the lake. Aha. In 6601, extremely detailed reports, structural analysis, water supply, rock type, etc., came back informing Rikuth that though the newly discovered cavern was habitable, it would be very expensive to build in. Rikuth made the decision after conferring with his advisors that Stoletooth, along with the new Rockbiter, should begin digging out more of the city proper into the cave wall for expansion, while Burrower and Stone-Eater would continue to tunnel past the cavern. In 6676, Rikuth met with leaders to discuss the involvement of outsiders. Though there had been no major incidents for hundreds of years, it was still an issue to be discussed. In the meetings it became apparent that though Rikuth understood the reasons for wishing to close down interaction with outsiders, it was a ridiculous thought. Their contribution to Dene culture, art, construction, technology and resources was immeasurable. Unless there were grand reasons not to, there was no way, he argued, that he would ever force strict resolutions regarding the outsiders. In his older years, it appeared as though Rikuth became tired of Yeesha and her views and opinions. She was expelled from the palace along with Kirith in 6700. It was well known that Kirith was a model of his mother's thoughts and Rikuth could hardly stand him. Though Rikuth had chosen an older brother of Kirith to be king, his thoughts were changed. As the legends told, Rikuth was on his own deathbed staring out towards the arch, and he saw his son Kirith sailing through it. He was riding a boat in the shape of a massive lizard, standing proudly on its prow, and had come home to announce the death of his mother. As he sailed through the arch, Rikuth apparently felt the hand of Yarvo directing him to make Kirith the next king of Dene. By the end of Rikuth's reign, the city was larger than ever, the classes were more divided than ever, and the religious beliefs were as divided as ever. Though there were not a large variety of beliefs, there was no clear majority of people who believed any one thing. Rikuth passed away in 6731 at the age of 289, leaving the throne to his third son, Kirath. He left him in a city that was larger than it had ever been and fairly even divided in its views of the future. Well, that is the room. So we've got the 3 first kings that we're missing there. We have one last king here, so that will be Kirath's book. Well, let's go and explore. I hope you guys enjoyed that lore dump. I thought it was really interesting, actually. There's definitely a lot. There's definitely a lot in there. But it's a really good overview of the entire history of Dene. So, there we go. Well, there is only one path to take. Well, that's not true, actually. We could go back to the main kind of plaza area, but if you recall, we do have a map. Here we go. So, where do we go? So we were up at 6 just there at the palace. So we're currently walking up this path around here. We've not been down here. We've not been down here. So we've not been to the ferry or any of these. So that's sort of where we are. Historical records. We'll have to watch the VOD to get the full picture. What I have started doing is I don't know if it will be of interest at all, but I have started editing up the VOD from last week to be a recording of just the content of the books and none of the other commentary. That will take a while to edit up though, because that is literally like hours and hours and hours of content, and I would also want to insert the missing books into it, probably. So so that will come at some point in the future. Okay, so we've gone over the rope bridge. Right, so this is actually going to lead us... Oh, no, that's... There we go. Wait, what's... Why do I not have my notebook now? There it is. Huh, that's weird. Not sure why it did that. Okay. So we're currently coming around this way at the moment. Aha! Make sure we stick our hand in as many things as possible. This thing out here, I wonder if that's the Tomb of the Great King. We should probably try walking back along this path as well, because, you know, I wouldn't necessarily put it past this to have, like, switches or buttons and things which you only see from one direction as you approach. Okay, so that's the rope bridge we were just walking along. So we've come down a few sets of stairs. We have another set of stairs that's going to take us back up to where we were, and it should just loop round. That looks like a door we can open. It looks a bit like a door we should be able to open, but maybe it's locked. These barriers are just like... It's like, you tried, barriers. You tried. Okay. So this drops us up back to here. So we can turn to the right and we'll go down this little bit here. There's this wall that we haven't looked at, and there's down these steps. So we'll go there next. Yeah, the barriers. Yeah, it's more of a suggestion than a rule. I mean, they're doing their best. They're doing their best. Now, if any of these buildings can be entered, we've not been in them. So we went up those stairs to get to the palace. That looks very much like a gate we should be able to open at some point, because unlike it being a flat door, there are clearly steps that are actually like rendered behind it. So I wonder if we're going to open that at some point. We've also got the inside of this thing, which is weird. It's kind of weird that there's a big rock in the middle. Ooh, do you know what? Interesting that that all lines up, though, isn't it? Huh. Yeah, okay. So I believe... Wait, hang on. It'll be these stairs that then go down to the ferry. Huh. That's interesting. So if we'd been on the stairs, I think we would actually get blocked by those. Come on, down we go. Ooh, secret path that way. We could definitely get down there. Path that way. Door here? No. Okay. When in doubt, let's take the secret path first. I tell you what, Denis is a dark place, isn't it? Yep. So, there's a lot of sort of seats. This looks like a bar, to be fair. Look, there are bottles behind here. So is this like a cafe? Doesn't look like there's very much in here. Oh, and that's not a door that can open. Can we get behind the bar somehow? We can. Is there a way to unlock the door from behind the bar? Like, the fact that the music is going for it makes me think that we've found something. There's also a hole, which would imply that we could drop down here if we wanted to. Oh, there's something... No, that's just the light on the outside of the room. Maybe there's nothing in here, or maybe there's nothing in here for now. Well, let's bank it in the mind hole for later, and come back here later on. Hang on. We've been down here. Yeah. Yeah, we have literally been down here. This is a one-way. We can't jump back up here. Okay, cool. Right, so that's that explored. Come on. Ugh. Ugh. Okay. Tell you what. To be a resident of Denis, you'd have to be well fit, wouldn't you? So fit. I mean, one way or another, you're going to end up being fit. How high do you reckon we are up now from the ferry there? There's got to be like 100 steps. Okay, let's go back along the path that we walked along, just to see if there's anything of interest if we go the reverse direction. Because I was going to say URU is a weird place. It's not called URU, obviously. Denis is a weird place. Like, gameplay-wise point of view, right? Because it's like, it's very large, and there's a lot of world building in it. Maybe that's why they lived so long. Yeah, maybe. It's very large. There's a lot of world building to it, but there's not a huge amount of stuff in it, let's say. Can I get past these? Like, there's a lot of buildings that you can't enter and doors you can't get through, let's say. Which is kind of confusing, because you expect... But then again, I mean, I'm just more used to puzzle games where you have a very tight geographic, like, possibility space for where things are and where you expect things to be. Like, I can't recall ever having an age in Myst that's this large, right? Except for, like, Riven, obviously. Okay, right, so we're back on the path here. Now, where are we heading towards? We're heading towards number 8, which is the library. Well, that sounds exactly like the kind of place we would want to go to find more books. Cones to warn people about not jumping in the water, maybe. Oh, looks like we can't jump in there even if we wanted to. Oh, hang on. I've just noticed. right? Obviously. Look, that rock that has the alignment on it, that aligns with number 8, yeah? So where we are walking to is this big building here. This is the library. Or maybe it's not, because we've got here, well, whatever this is, way sooner. Worlds this big aren't that common. Yup. Well, we'll stick our hand in that to make the backtracking a little bit quicker later. But, right, let's check out the peripheries of this. So we've got doors up there, doors around there. Yeah. We're not going that way. Definitely not. Ha 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 ha. We can parkour our way up here. Oh, which is clearly something, actually. This is clearly going to take us somewhere. That's just a rock. Or maybe it's not going to take us anywhere. Maybe it'll just loop us around the building. Or it might be a Relto page. You never know. Or it might just be a dead end with nothing in it. See, that's weird. Like, that's kind of what I mean when I say things like, you know, URU is a little bit of a weird game in places. Because you'd think that that was something, like, even if it's just a Relto page, but it kind of looks like it might have been nothing at all. Nothing at all. Okay, so back this way. So, still definitely no path that way. Well, I think that's it then. I think that this is the end of the line in terms of where we can go. So let's try the lower door first. Oh, okay. That surprised me a bit. Okay, what do we got? We got notebooks. Himin's story. Okay. Kedri. Myrta. And do we have anything on these pedestals? Doesn't look like it. Okay. So there's plenty of stuff downwards. Is there also then a room up the top? Like, is this also a room? No. Right. So there is only one way. Fine. Fine, fine, fine. We're doing that kind of Skyrim RPG thing where it's like, oh, is that the path? Oh, well, in that case, we need to, like, head back and do something else. Okie dokie. Well, my friends, that is all we're going to have time for in today's episode. Next time out, we're going to make a start at the library, beginning with Meheman's story, who is someone who we actually kind of got reference to earlier on in this episode. If you're watching on YouTube in the future, thank you very much for coming by to the stream. Thank you very much for watching. Do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next week. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, YouTube. For those of us on Twitch, thank you very much for coming along to the stream today. I've had great fun streaming for you. Great fun doing some audiobook adventures. Always